Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us and welcome into another edition of the show. I'm your host, Ben Crossan, by the way, and we're going to head in today with a company called TestM. And I think we've all had this problem where, smartphones, obviously a big deal in everyone's lives. And, sometimes you buy them from, straight from the manufacturer, be it Apple or, Samsung or what have you. And then in a lot of cases and a lot of times, well, they're just deals that are too good to pass up. And, when you go to, eBay or you go to Amazon or somewhere that sells you a phone, well, it's hard to really see if there's anything more than scratches, dents, and dings. And, you really don't get too much more technical than that. So this company that we're going to have on today in just a moment is the company that's going to help with all of that. And very, very interesting. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to them. But before we do that, a few things to mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find anything and everything having to do with today's show. Be that show notes, a link to our guest website, or any articles, videos, just anything that we do here on the program, you can find in the show notes after the show. And, very, very simple. You can do that anywhere, anytime. So also be sure to check out the contest for Computer America. We partner with Logitech, and every single Friday we give away a prize to a lucky listener. We read their name live on the air, and hey, we could be reading yours if you enter. And then the last thing is, of course, the live video stream where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. Just another way to experience the show. So I think with all of that being said, we're just going to kind of jump right into this. And yeah, this is pretty cool because I actually, was able to run some tests, try this product out myself. And, while it can't be more simple, I'm sure underneath the hood, it's, it's pretty comprehensive, and we're going to learn all about this company. So once again, joining us is a company called TestM. You can find out more at testm.com. And we have with us Mr. Aviv Tene, and he is the COO for the company. So yeah, Aviv, thanks for joining us here on Computer America.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me on.
This is going to be great. So, I did exactly as you recommended. I was able to get some hands-on with the app. But before we jump into how exactly it works, why don't you give us some background on the company TestM? When did it start, and how you found yourself working there?
So, in order, how it started is basically our CEO was working in a lab, and he ran into the exact problems you were describing in the intro. He was wanting to upgrade his phone. He wanted to get the best value for the phone that he's selling, and he wanted to make sure that the phone he's upgrading to is in perfect working condition. And he was also asked by friends and family and a bunch of people that knew he was working in the lab to check for any potential problems in phones they were looking at. And he found that it takes him a long time, and it's a long and arduous process, and he basically said to himself, there's got to be a better way. And he came up with exactly these features to address that problem, and he came up with something that solves that problem in 5 minutes or less, and it gives the buyers the ability to check under the hood and actually find out that all the components on the phone are working.
I gotcha. No, and we're going to talk exactly about how that all works, because it's really, I've done diagnostic testing. I've done a lot of setup on, computers, phones, blah, blah, blah. And it can get very, very technical. It can get over your head very quickly. And, this app so far, from what I can tell, is anything but. So, and again, I'm sorry, but a little bit of background on yourself. I mean, I'm assuming, you didn't start here.
Yeah, I didn't start here. I've actually been with a variety of companies, and in general, I've helped a variety of companies penetrate the U.S. market. My specialty, coming from Israel myself, was to really translate getting great ideas, but how to communicate that value in the American market.
Hmm.
And I've met with the team actually almost 2 years back. I flew out to Barcelona, met with Eden and the investor group, which is behind this. And when Eden started out, he started out small and he reached about 2,000 users locally. And when we saw the potential behind this, we understood that it's a very, very big market to address. There's $17 billion going to be done in this business of secondary market. And what our mission is to really give buyers the ability to go from buying in the dark to really turning on the light and seeing under the hood of all of these features that our smartphones have. Because we found from our research, a current buyer will, turn the phone on and off, maybe look at the surface to see if there's any scratches, and in the best case, they will make a call or send a text. But we all know smartphones have so many more features. We're reliant on every component they have, whether it be the screen itself, GPS. There's all sorts of components in the phones, from location services to GPS to sound being right, and that we depend on for our everyday lives now. It's not just something we sit at the desk and use or something we use just to communicate. We use this for every single aspect of our life, and your average person looks at his phone 4 times a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely agree. I mean, even in my household, we just were able to, gather up all of our old phones. We just upgraded to, new phones, and it's surprising that when you get a new phone, you kind of think that your old one, it's old technology, is kind of useless. It's not worth anything, and quite the contrary, hundreds of dollars even for old phones, to the right sellers. So you're right. I mean, this industry is certainly booming, and I guess, this is the first time I've seen a product such as TestM. So I think a good place to kind of go with this next is, just how does it work? Because, from my personal experience just now, you have a quick test, you have a long test. Why don't we start with, downloading it from the App Store? Someone has it in their hands. How would the end user go about, using this product?
So just like you said, it's right on the App Store in the Apple sphere, and it's right on Google Play for all Android users. And you mentioned we made it simple. It's very simple for the user and it walks you through every step of the process. But obviously on the back end, we've tested over 2,500 devices, and it actually works on 65 different devices. So we try to cover everybody that's going to be in the market for that secondary phone. The quick test and the full test that you mentioned, the quick test is for a consumer that has a problem with his phone and wants to know, is there something wrong with the phone? Is it something I'm doing wrong? And it basically runs you through a rudimentary test, starting with painting your screen
Hmm.
and just a few of the simple background things we do in the background at the same time to allow you to, within a minute, get the understanding of what the condition of your phone is. The full test is really for the buyers and the sellers, and that's designed to go through every 19 steps of a deep dive into every component of the phone. And we start with the screen, of course, and then we go to sound. And there's 4 different tests we do on sound. We test your earphones, we test your speaker, we test your earpiece. In the motion section, we address the gyroscope. We have you do a very simple test of flipping the phone over to make sure that the gyroscope is working properly. We check the compass. And then we go to the connectivity. Everybody's always worried, do I have Wi-Fi here? Do I not have Wi-Fi here? This will test the Wi-Fi, and we actually run a test that allows you to know what the speed of the Wi-Fi is. We test the connectivity to the Bluetooth. A lot of times people, when they made the conversion from a wired device to a Bluetooth device, are wondering, is that connectivity right? Is the earphones or the Bluetooth device malfunctioning, or is it the phone and its connectivity features? With TestM, you can test that specifically and find out exactly where the problem lies, or if there isn't a problem and you're just using it wrong. We test your GPS. We look at your cellular signal. So a lot of times the concern is I'm in a certain place and I'm not hearing right. I don't know if it's the cellular signal not reaching my phone or it's a problem on my phone. This allows you to do the quick test and find out, or if you're in the market to buy or sell your phone, you can actually make that determination and attach it to the report. And then we go to hardware, into the proximity sensor. We want you to test the charger. A lot of times people charge their phone and they don't know why it's not charging fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
We test it with your charger. So when you run the full test, we actually recommend you have your charger nearby, you have your Bluetooth device nearby to run a full test, and that allows you to attach a full report when you're contemplating buying or selling it. And the important part is the buyer now, if you just mentioned you just upgraded your phone. So let's say the person who's buying your old phone with you, he sees your ad and your phone is completely fine. And he sees another ad and they say the same thing. They have the same photo, but how does he know? So if you attach a TestM report, it basically tells them this went through an independent third-party testing, and it attaches every single one of the components that is tested. And he can verify that A, he's getting a phone in good working condition, and B, that the phone is not stolen, because the other thing it does is it takes the IMEI and compares it to whether it's been reported stolen or not. So it increases the confidence with the buyer, thereby also increasing the resale value for the seller. And we really want to address this need that we're going to be using a lot of, language from the car world. And the reason is in the cell phone market, which has become, after the car, probably the biggest expenditure in our life that we're involved with.
Right.
We're addressing that need, allowing taking your car to a mechanic and looking under the hood before you buy. We're allowing you to do that in 5 minutes or less on the phone and remotely. So you could be buying a device from somebody in Canada, but if they attach a TestM report, guess what? Now you know the condition of the phone, you know that it's the phone that's being sold, and you've attached a third-party report on it that verifies the claim that it's in good working condition.
Yeah, right. And just if you're watching the video portion, we have kind of your demo test up here, where it kind of gives you all the information at a glance. Very, very all encompassing. I mean, but before we go any further, I definitely have to ask you. Even later on in the program today, we're going to have a couple of news stories involving, security flaws with Flash and things like that. I mean, every other day there's a new Fortune 500 company being hacked. And I will say this, that when I was doing your test, you have people do things that, for an iPhone just makes sense. You want to make sure the Touch ID works. You want to make sure that the cameras work, and you have people take selfies. You have people turn on the geolocation. I mean, there's a lot of data that you have submitted, again, just to perform these diagnostics, that people would not be would not be happy if they fell into the wrong hands. So what kind of security have you set up to make sure, or actually before that, what kind of data do you collect on the individual, and have you considered security on your servers or just in general?
We have definitely spent a lot of time and money making sure that the servers are secure. As far as the data, the one message that we want to make very clear is we will never use data of yours without your permission. We were not going to spam you to death. We're not going to do any of that. If you want to opt in and receive messages, that's an option. But we are very, very careful about the privacy of our users, and that's the reason we ask you those questions. So despite the fact that it may lead to a longer test and a longer experience, because we are so sensitive to the fact that you're sharing your location right now, what that might mean, we ask you at every step to think about that before you allow us access to that. But at the end of the day, I can't test your GPS if I don't have your GPS on, so I have to ask your permission to do that. If you allow me to do that, then I will access it on that, and you can turn it right back off once the test is done. The test can be either ongoing. You can have, test them in the background for a while, and you can test it. A lot of people love the speed test, and they check their connectivity, every few minutes. There's a phenomenon, you walk through an airport and you see people very close to their chargers, sitting in all kinds of awkward positions because people want to make sure that they have full battery before they get on a flight. You will see people wanting to get work done, and they're very concerned: is the Wi-Fi here secure? Is the Wi-Fi here fast? Am I really connected to Wi-Fi, or am I using the cellular signal? You run into all these phenomena where people will use the TestM app even not in the process of buying or selling a phone. We try to make it fun and easily accessible for these users. However, if you're buying or selling a phone, we want to test all 19 tests on your phone, because the value to the buyer, he wants to know that we've tested all of these components, and it's important for them to make sure that they've been tested by a third party and that we attach this report. Now, this report currently has a 2-hour window that it's good for.
Mhm.
We're playing around based on feedback with the length of that, because we want to make sure that I didn't test the phone, something happens to it later, and then I put it in a box and ship it to you. So we actually have a time limit, and all that information is erased before a certain time period elapses.
That is interesting. So I guess you can't generate as soon as you get the phone, generate a flawless test and then use it for a year and then go back and retrieve that first test because it wouldn't be valid anymore. And that's that's a very, very smart thing to do. So, you have this test in hand. It's shareable. I'm assuming that you can, send it to others via email, text. I'm sure you have a couple ways to send it. Now that, let's say, someone has it as a seller, you can verify that your phone is up to par and in perfect condition. How does that help you as a seller? Does that help you on the third party kind of marketplace, or do you have partners that you work with that kind of say, if this if this works the way it does, then we'll buy it from you? How does the certificate help you sell your phone?
So in one short answer is it increases its value. And let's discuss why. If I'm a buyer and I'm buying something that is basically making a claim that it's in good working condition, it's worth X to me. If I have a third-party verification, if you will use, again, from the car world, the KRACK thing, if I have a Carfax, I know that the history reported on this car has not included accidents, and if it does, it includes that. And that alone increases my confidence when I buy the car, mitigating the risk I'm taking by buying something online or buying something without a mechanic standing right next to me. TestM is your mechanic, and it does something that Carfax doesn't do. Carfax will check the history of reported accidents. TestM actually checks the phone itself on the device itself and provides you real-time information about the condition. So if I'm the seller and I'm listing it for 100, we have learned that I can now list it for 100 plus, let's say 110, 120, because the buyer now feels more confident that the device is in perfect working condition, and he doesn't have that risk that he's taking on that the device may not be right. Even if he has the ability to give a refund or anything like that, the hassle of dealing with is worth time and money as well. So just attaching a report to your phone inherently increases its resale value.
Very, very well said. And then from the buyer side, obviously in a lot of cases, in a lot of these transactions, as you mentioned, you buy them online, you buy them, from third party stores, you never really get your hands on them. Would you recommend buyers, ask people to go download this and try it themselves, or, when they first purchase it, download this and give it a try themselves? How would you recommend a buyer go about using this app?
So we'll talk to personal experience, and you're absolutely right. The big marketplace is obviously the online market and we're buying remotely, but let's take it down to a personal level. You're buying this from a friend. The friend thinks his phone is fine, but honestly, he hasn't used several of the features in many years, and he could honestly make an honest mistake and tell you the phone is fine. You go home and you open it up, and a certain feature that you use that he doesn't acts up on you.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it's a very awkward situation. You just bought a phone from a friend. And now how do you tell him, you screwed me over? No. You say, what do we do? And it's an awkward place. And I think, if we take it from that personal transaction, it's like, do you mind running this through it? Or online, we bought a lot of the phones we tested. And what we did is insist people run this test on them before we bought these phones, because we want to make sure the phones are either in perfect working condition or in some point for testing purposes. We were actually looking for phones with certain parts damaged so we can run the test on them. So it helped us both in the selection process but also in the verification process. So it's very simple. All a buyer needs to do If he's buying a phone and it doesn't have a TestM report attached, which is about 99.9% of the market currently,
Mm-hmm.
we believe that once we're going to do a launch and the market becomes aware of it, there won't be a buyer that says, okay, I'm going to buy it without it. And again, if we're using the analogy of Carfax, it took several years to pick up, but at this point, there's no used car dealership that's not using the Carfax because of the level of confidence and because it makes the transaction a lot more human. It's no longer, am I getting, a defect? Am I getting something that I'm not? Am I buying a lemon? Part of the deal is shining the light, if you will, under that hood and giving you the tools and empowering you to make a informed decision when you're buying something that you're obviously not going to open an iPhone and take it apart and test every spot. This gives you the ability to do that within 5 minutes on the device itself and feel confident about your purchase.
Right. And, just because you seem so knowledgeable at this, I'm going to ask you, obviously, this app, it's, I think it had like 19 different tests or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very all encompassing, but it, in some ways there has to be some limitations. Just one off the top of my head, I could think of, maybe battery life, see how quickly the battery drains, things like that. You can't test I assume you can't test for things like that. I know that you do you do test the charger, but are there any kind of key areas that people should also be aware of when purchasing a phone that maybe wouldn't
Absolutely.
show up in your tests?
Absolutely. So we do everything that we can, which I think is very robust, and those 19 tests are very all-encompassing. But obviously, I can test if the screen is in good working condition, but, if it's scratched and it's still working, I won't be able to pick that up on my test. You have to use your own eyes. So we're not saying, trust it 100%, but trust what it tests 100%. So obviously look for any blemishes on your phone. And also you mentioned battery life. That's a very good observation. So on the Android market, I can actually go in there and tell you where the battery is in its life cycle. So let's say we're looking at a phone that's a year old. Is it one of those batteries that tends to drain after 20 minutes, or does the battery still have enough battery life and where it is in its life cycle?
Mm.
In the Apple devices, that's a much harder device to do. And because the way Apple is set up, I can tell you, whether you charge it fully, whether it's getting a good charge when it's plugged in. But unless I conduct several hours of a test, I can't tell you how fast it will drain. So at that point, we don't have that yet, and that's because of how Apple is set up. But we can tell you the condition of the battery currently if it's charging properly.
Right. No, just just something to, of course, think about. But again, the test that you were running. By the way, I want to make this very clear to everyone. There was something simple. It was like, press here for force touch, and you take your finger, hold the circle, press down on it. It's something that I feel anyone who has ever touched a cell phone should be able to do. I mean, these tests are not technical. They're not, over your head. It's very, very simple to do. And like I said, very all encompassing. So, this is all great and everything, but you mentioned here that you say that TestM is disrupting the mobile market. That's a big claim. That is something that I'm not sure if disrupting a market is always the best thing. Why do you say that? Why do you say that TestM is doing that? And I'm assuming, how is this a good thing?
So again, before we started this, before I joined the team, I wasn't aware of just how much of a need there is to be able to test that used phone. What I've learned is, there's every single phone we are holding. Let's say we buy the X now. The estimates right now is that phone will have 5 owners before it's done. Devices have, most of them climbed above the $500 range to the point where not everybody wants to run out and get that iPhone X because not everybody wants to spend $1,000 on a brand new device that has some features that are valuable, but at the end of the day, they need their basic needs, or they need something that a device that's a year or 2 or 3 old gives them everything that they need for a lot less. And we want to give the people who want to have a good smartphone in working condition for under $500, the ability to say, okay, I bought a used device. It is a smart move. It's a very smart move to save money, just like it is in the used car market. You're not losing that, once you take it out of the box, you've already lost $300 of its value.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to save that money, get almost every feature that's available, because some of these upgrades are just upgrades that trying to get the people who buy new phones on. So we're really helping, and the estimate is $17 billion market per year. Really save some money and do it with their eyes open. So we really do believe it's disruptive. We're not just making the claim. I think, like you said, you haven't seen, there's been some rudimentary attempts that do part of what we do. It's not as easy to use, but what we do really, I think, is the first one out there that gives you the ability to look at two phones and be able to tell this one is in perfect working condition, this one is not, and where am I going to spend my money? It's the equivalent of literally having a mechanic next to you when you're buying a car.
Right. And taking your analogy a bit further, having a mechanic telling you what the problems are, that's great. But if your mechanic can't fix them and just says, here's all your problems, good luck with that. That's one thing. And, again, just through my own poking around, I saw that you have, an option to find a person that can, kind of fix your phone for you. I'm sorry, what is that feature? Do you link to kind of reputable repair shops, or how does the, kind of fixing your phone's problem once you identify them, how does that work?
Exactly. So we're developing that phase. Right now, it just shows you repair shops that are listed and readily available. You could look them up yourself, but we allowed you to do that from the app while you're using it. And obviously, we all like the shortcut. There is every intent to build that database to the point where it's being reviewed or it's being verified, where we have people talking to these people, making sure they're up to par and that their pricing is also correct. Because just like we want to save you from a fraudulent case or a case where you're buying a device that's not good, if you want to fix your phone, we don't want you to get overcharged. So we're working on creating price lists for every kind of repair. We're working with getting ratings to stores. We're working with all of that. But at this point, it's a database of repair shops nearby that you can physically go to or ship to and do that. We want to give you the ability to use our app to do either buying, selling, or fixing. But the fixing part, we still need to build that database based on the amount of users and the stores that will get involved.
Right. So, and, makes perfect sense. Obviously, this is a new product. And, one of the reasons you're here is because, hey, we love new products. So, let's talk about the whole selling your phone, because I didn't notice that I have no intention whatsoever of selling my phone. I just wanted to, kind of see how, kind of how my phone stands up to a test. But right at the end, it gives you an option, would you like to sell your phone? And I think it gave you, it helped you with some, pretty outline kind of specific things, like, what other attachments do you have for it? And then I think it said eBay, if I recall correctly. How does TestM help you sell your phone?
So basically, at this point, the best thing to do is attach the report. Currently on eBay, they are very opposed to having links within the ads linked to somewhere that's going to take you off of their website. So at this point with eBay, we obviously recognize it's one of the biggest marketplaces in the world, and we will be working with them on ways to collaborate and allow users to actually have a link on. But at this point, that's not available. Obviously, when we get to a critical amount of users, that's a conversation that's going to take place with eBay and every other secondary market out there, because the intent is for you to be able to quickly and easily attach this to your listing wherever it may be to increase the value of your device.
Right. And no, it's I think so far we've covered a lot. The last thing I want to ask you here, Aviv, is obviously it sounds like you have a lot of plans for the future. This has a lot of different ways that it can grow. Where do you see TestM kind of moving into? Do you see it as, kind of going to be the de facto tool for any digital device, or what's your next step?
So yes, I think any digital device, and we are working with tablets as well, but right now we're obviously focusing on the smartphone market. because it is the biggest use case, and we want to reach and help as many users as possible. Obviously, if it can test a phone, it can easily test a tablet as well. We haven't tested as many devices. We've tested hundreds of them, but we're not in the thousands yet, and we don't want to focus on that until we can cover a good percentage of the market. So at this point, we're focusing on phones, but obviously any digital devices, first step will be tablets, TVs if you want to look further down, and any digital device. And the market will dictate, the response from users. We are about listening to our users, getting feedback from your users. If a user suggests something on a device, we respond to it immediately. One of the advantages of being, a startup is we're fast, we're nimble, we react very fast.
And Aviv, I'm going to have to stop you right there for a moment. Would you mind staying over for just a minute? All right,
Absolutely.
everyone, Computer America, TestM, we'll be right back.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. Everyone, we are continuing on here with the show. If you're just joining us, welcome. We are talking to a company called TestM, and we have Mr. Aviv Tene. He is the COO and, ran just a bit too close to the break there. But Aviv, I wanted to, kind of give you a chance and say, first of all, thank you for coming on to Computer America. And if people want to find out more, website, app, where should they go?
Both. So testm.com is our website. Go directly on the App Store to find TestM and download it, or on Google Play for Android devices. We cover both. And basically, we want to really reach out to every person who is buying or selling a phone. If you're a buyer and you're looking at a phone and you're wondering, how do I make sure it's in perfect working condition? Test them first, and then you buy.
Perfect. So, and everyone, again, we have a link to those in the show notes if you want to go check that out, computeramerica.com. But TestM, TestM, can be much easier. You can check that out for yourself. And Aviv, again, this was very enlightening. I think you have a product here that, you mentioned, Carfax a couple times. You're right. This is the first time I've ever heard of a product such as yourself. And trust me, we hear a lot of products here on the show. And, I think that you're going to have a lot of success. You are going to have a lot of success. There we go. But thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
All right, Aviv, have a great one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, there he goes, everyone. And yeah, wow, I was tongue-tied there at the end. But yeah, that was, again, TestM. You can check it out. And there's not much more to say about it. It is a very obvious product. It just took someone to sit down, make it, and from what I've seen, they made it pretty darn well. So check it out, testm.com. All right. Now, in the meantime, though, we have a couple of programs that we can do. We have computer and technology news. Here we go. Brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. Oh, yep, there we go. All right. And I think a good place to start today would be with one of the larger stories today. And when I say large, I mean huge, monstrous, crazy huge, where, okay, there are certain underlying technologies that kind of permeate our world today. And you could think of things such as USB, which is, universal serial bus. We have things such as Bluetooth, which make a lot of devices, able to kind of do what they do. And it's a huge deal. And when these underpinning technologies, when there are security flaws or, just something happens, it's a very base level problem, because it's not just, insert company here that has this problem. Instead, it's entire industries. And, I may be sounding hyperbole, because this particular problem, two things, affects everyone and has already been fixed. Although I guess I should add a third in there, and that is, that doesn't mean that the problem is over. So we have and so we are linking to an article here. And it's actually the website, the paper, the demo. They published it. This is by this is by Mr. Matthew Venhoff. Hopefully I said that right. And he published a paper about about a security flaw in WPA2, which I'm pretty sure, not encryption, but it's the type of authentication technology, I think, for Wi-Fi. Anyways, we're going to get into it, but essentially this affects most Wi-Fi devices out there, and it can do some pretty scary stuff. So getting into, kind of the nitty gritty, they're saying that, and, again, speaking from IMEC Distrinet, that is the company that, kind of funded his research, but they said that they discovered a serious weakness in WPA2, a protocol that secures all modern protected Wi-Fi networks. So it's a protection protocol. An attacker within range of a victim can exploit these weaknesses using key reinstallation attacks, and this is called KRACK. So key reinstallation attacks, KRACK. And they say that concretely, attackers can use this novel attack technique to read information that was previously assumed to be safely encrypted, and that this can be abused to steal sensitive information such as credit card numbers, passwords, chat messages, emails, photos, and so on. Essentially, any data that flows over a Wi-Fi connection, which is any data that you put online via your computer, phone, tablet, what have you. And they said that the attacks works against all modern protected Wi-Fi networks. Again, all modern Wi-Fi, all protected Wi-Fi networks. And they say modern because WPA2 obviously is a newer standard of WPA. And yeah, the fact that there's a flaw in the second generation of it just means that millions of devices, and by extension, millions of people, are affected in the same way. So, depending on the network configuration, it is also possible to inject and manipulate data, where, for example, an attacker might be able to inject ransomware or other malware into websites. Pretty tricky. Now, it seems that, just speaking to that last part, it seems like any website manipulation would be happening on the client side. So if they were to visit, a very popular website and there were malware, ransomware that was being installed via the website, it sounds like it wouldn't be, just take google.com, for example. It wouldn't be google.com's fault because it's happening client side. Now, the weaknesses are in the Wi-Fi standard itself and not in individual products or implementations. That's why this is such a big deal. Saying that therefore any correct implementation of WPA2 is likely affected. And to prevent the attack, users must update affected products as soon as security updates become available. Note that if your device supports Wi-Fi, it is most likely affected. And think about, and here's the problem that we're going to get to a little bit later on, is that think about how many devices are on Wi-Fi. And that's the problem. It's not just asking you to secure your routers or your modems or what have you. It's not asking you to correct just the point of your Wi-Fi, but any devices that connect via Wi-Fi. So that's home security systems. That is cell phones, tablets, televisions, any kind of smart device in your home. It's a lot of different devices. And let's face it, probably a majority of these will never be updated. Take things like security webcams, they will never be updated. So that's why this will continue to be a pretty big problem. So they said that during our initial research, we discovered ourselves that Android, Linux, Apple, Windows, OpenBSD, MediaTek, Linksys, and others are all affected by some variant of the attack. And for information about these specifics, you can check out essentially they have a white paper, there we go, that you can check out and see exactly the problem. Now, and if you go read the article, they have a demonstration here of just what kind of information they can pull off of a network. But, it goes into some of the details on exactly how this works. I think that's a little bit much for what we do here on the show. But if you want to check out the paper or any of this stuff, they said that, anyways, it's available in the show notes, so you can definitely check it out. Now, again, to my third point, actually to my second point. The first point was that this is a big deal. The second point is that it's not, because Microsoft has already pushed out an update that will be going out to all devices that, of course, are on the Microsoft network that has fixed this. It doesn't take long after you publish papers such as these that companies should, hey, it's like someone telling you that your tire's flat. They should act quickly, and they act, because, hey, the problem has been pointed out for them. It's a known issue. So Microsoft has already solved the problem. I'm sure all or most companies will follow suit. If you receive an update here in the next couple days, that is probably pretty crucial to being secure on Wi-Fi. Now, why this will continue to be a problem, and it goes back to my previous point of, think of all the devices out there. There has to be billions of web-connected devices. Not all of them are going to be updated. I mean, heck, when it says, hey, your webcam is currently out of date, would you like to update it? And let's face it, in 99.99999% of use cases, it's just there to show an image and it works. It will never be updated because, hey, why risk breaking something? That is a true sensation that people have. They feel that if nothing is broken or they can't discern anything wrong with their device, then they feel no need to upgrade it. And that's going to happen with hundreds of millions of devices, and they're all going to be susceptible. That doesn't really matter for the individual. No one really cares about John Doe in, I probably shouldn't name any particular state, but in the middle of nowhere. No one really cares about John Doe in the middle of nowhere, or Jane Doe in the middle of tens or hundreds of millions of people. But this kind of attack, as we've seen over the past year or more, actually, heck, the beginning of time, or at least since technology has been around, now that this is published, now that this is a known problem, imagine if they used it to get into the network traffic of a police station, or the network traffic of, enter any kind of highly confidential, should not be surveilled upon data stream. Yeah, it's completely possible, and they have a pretty good way of doing it, as every single device that is connected to Wi-Fi is now vulnerable. This is going to affect a lot of people, and its implications are going to be years in the making. So, yeah, we'll definitely see what happens, but right now there are updates. If you receive one on any of your devices, please update them as soon as possible, just to keep yourself safe. There you have it. So again, that was the biggest one, because it's not every day that so many devices are hacked, or at least a security flaw is identified on so many devices at the same time, because it's such a base technology. So, all right. Now, that was a little heady, so instead of heading into that one, why don't we choose a story here that's a little bit easier to digest? And, Yeah. Okay. How about we do this one? Where Apple, of all companies, why don't we talk about Apple real quick? So, if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, it's, and you lose a lawsuit, it's not always the easiest thing to say, all right, we lose, we'll pay up. And even if you're Apple and you have to pay to the order of 440 million. Now, again, don't get me wrong. That is, I don't want to say chump change, but that is a fraction of the cash reserves on hand by Apple. They could pay that tomorrow. But Apple isn't going down without a fight. And this is over a lawsuit with another company that you've probably not heard of, where they are suing Apple over the patent behind FaceTime. Just goes to show you that large companies, even though they're the ones that make the technology popular, aren't exactly the ones who thought of it first. So this is coming from Engadget, and we have John Fingus to thank for this, where VernetX's seemingly endless FaceTime patent lawsuit against Apple is winding down, where an Eastern District of Texas court has denied all of Apple's motions to end the case in a non-infringement ruling or retrial, leaving the tech giant with the final judgment that orders it to pay about $439 million. $440 million. That's a lot of cheese. So they said that that's much more than the $302 million Apple was told to pay last year, where VernetX, widely considered a patent troll, which is obviously why you probably have not heard of them, they said is unsurprisingly elated to have at having won its third jury battle against Apple. And however, it can't really rest on its laurels, where that judgment isn't as final as it seems at first blush. And, here on the show, we've talked about patent trolls before. They are, kind of startup companies that patent very vague, very basic ideas, and they wait for people to step on their toes. And in this case, obviously the idea of FaceTime using, a phone camera to film yourself while you talk to someone using, voice. I'm sure it was something general along those lines. And yeah, looks like Apple was the one to step on that particular bear trap. So to begin with, Apple tells TechCrunch that it plans to appeal the final judgment, and it's no small matter that the USPTO has already invalidated all of VernetX's patents, where that doesn't stop the ongoing case, but that the invalidation kicks in the moment all appeals have been exhausted, saying that if Apple has better luck in court, VernetX won't get a second shot, and it can't wield those patents in a new lawsuit regardless of what happens to Apple. This is where the legal system is slowly but surely catching up because of these patent trolls, and they're taking more and more power away from them. Where if they're a company that makes no discernible product and has made no attempts at making a product and tried to capitalize on their patents, then the courts are starting to not let them keep their patents. If they're just sitting on patents and they're waiting for people to take their ideas from them, but they have no intentions of ever acting on them, then that obviously is the opposite of what patents are meant to do. Patents are meant to push innovation. If you have a good idea and you want to bring it to market, it protects that person and their idea from being stolen, and obviously that's not how patent trolls work. So they said that the judgment could still raise concerns for companies affected by other VernetX held patents, as it might set a higher bar for payouts in the future, where Microsoft only had to pay $200 million, for example, where, however, VernetX has said more, VernetX may have more trouble winning the lawsuits going forward. A Supreme Court ruling in May forced companies to sue in places where they're either based or do a large chunk of their business, preventing companies from cherry-picking court districts that tend to favor patent trolls. And they said that while this doesn't rule out future Verna X victories, the firm will likely face a slower legal process and courts that aren't quite so receptive to its demands. Yeah, patent trolls had a very good game going. They seem to be, kind of dwindling, and totally a good thing. But Apple still has one more fight to fight. $440 million, though. You bet they're going to fight it tooth and nail. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. All right. So we have time for just about 2 more stories. And how about we do... All right. So this one was a long time coming. And unfortunately, it had to happen eventually. Well, it didn't have to happen, but you knew it was going to happen eventually. We're a drone. Yeah. Those things, they're fun. They're useful. We're finding them in more and more applications. Well, some idiot, and I say that with all conviction, some moron, nincompoop, dummy, however you want to say it, a drone has been hit by a commercial plane for the first time in Canada. And they said that it was flying illegally around a Quebec City airport, which makes no sense to me. Quebecs are very, very angry people. And the fact that you want to fly drones illegally around there makes no sense. What do you want to do? Film their anger? It's, whatever. So a twin-engine commercial prop aircraft, so not even like a large aircraft, like one that could have seriously been damaged by a drone. But they said that a twin-engine commercial prop aircraft has struck a drone for the first time in Canada. And they said that the Skyjet Beach King Air 100 was on approach to Jean Lesage International Airport in Quebec when it hit an unknown type of, unmanned aerial vehicle, or i.e. drone. And they said that Garneau said that the drone was flying at around 1,500 feet, 3 miles from the airport, which is about 500 feet above the legal limit. 1,500 feet. Oh my God, that's a 150-story building, and yeah, you're not supposed to go above 1,000. And above 1,000 feet. And 1,000 feet is a pretty good distance. I don't know what they were trying to film, other than, I can only assume at this point, a plane crash. So they said that the plane landed safely and sustained only minor damage, but it could have been a lot more serious. Absolutely. I mean, if it hits it, somewhere where it's plated in metal, perfect, that's fine. But if it happened to hit one of the props and it jammed something up, obviously that could definitely happen. It could have been catastrophic. Now, any aircraft in an air traffic control area around airports must have clearance to be there, and that drones aren't permitted above about 300 feet in Canada under penalty of a $3,000 fine, saying it is important to note that the aircraft are particularly vulnerable when on final approach coming in, saying that the pilot is concentrating on landing properly, and yeah, let's face it, they don't have a lot of wiggle room. Not like you can, you come in for approach, not like you can kind of turn to the left a bit. No, you have to hit that landing strip dead on. They don't have much place, many places to go. Now, governments around the world have struggled to balance passenger safety with the commercial needs of a drone pilot, and the U.S. Federal Aeronautics Administration (FAA) recently released its own rules that require daylight or dusk operation within the pilot's line of sight. And commercial drone pilots must be at least 16 years old and need to pass the aeronautical knowledge test, or just kind of like a driver's license. Yeah, you got to get a drone pilot's license. And they said that in Canada, the rules implemented in March of this year are even more strict, where drones must be kept 5.6 miles away, which I'm no expert. Sounds to be about 10 kilometers. I don't know. Away from an airport or body of water where aircraft take off. And anyone found to have endangered an aircraft could be subject to a $25,000 fine. That's a lot of cheese. And when it comes to safety, I don't think anything is overkill. And that was, again, the Minister of Transport for Canada. But yeah, again, idiot, moron. Anyone who flies a drone in an irresponsible place, over a crowd of people, or, I don't know, around planes, over highways, football games, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there are so many places that you will never affect anyone or anything. There are safe places and very, very, nice places to fly your drones. You don't have to go breaking the law. You don't have to go putting people's lives in danger. So, again, happened in Canada, and just awful to see. But, of course, there always has to be that one idiot out there. So, all right, with that said, we have time for just one more, and here's one that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And by that, I mean the Supreme Court is deciding something for the U.S. if they have bearing on the rest of the world. Now, I'm not going to bash America. America is great. Love it, love it, love it. But when you start talking about international law and whether or not the U.S. has a right to dictate what that is, seems a little overreaching, even for the highest court in the land. Now, this coming to us from Ars Technica, saying that the Supreme Court is to decide if the U.S. has a right to data on world servers. Kind of think how international waters are now. They have to decide if U.S. held companies or U.S. individuals on world servers, because hey, a lot of the information that you access are not always held on U.S. servers. In fact, probably the majority of data that you've handled at some point has flowed through international servers. So the question is, does the U.S. have a right to search those servers with a U.S. warrant? And so the Supreme Court on Monday agreed to decide whether law enforcement authorities armed with a valid search warrant from a federal judge can demand that the U.S. tech sector hand over data that is stored on overseas servers. Saying that in this case, which is now one of the biggest privacy cases on the high court's docket, the justices will review a lower court's ruling that U.S. warrants don't apply to data housed on foreign servers. In this instance, a Microsoft server in Ireland. Yeah, again, it's not that uncommon. In fact, it's probably par for the course that data is stored all over the world. Now, the U.S. government appealed, contending it has the legal right with a valid court order to reach into the world servers with the assistance of the tech sector, no matter where the data is stored. Now, the case has huge foreign policy ramifications as well, where federal authorities sometimes demand that U.S. tech sector comply with court orders that conflict with laws of countries where the data is housed. Now, they said that all the while, Congress is mulling legislation to enable the federal government to negotiate reciprocity. Man, I'm not good with English today. Agreements with like-minded foreign nations to give each side a right to data on foreign servers with a valid warrant. I think in that case they're referring more to the Five Eyes project, which is like America, Ireland, Australia, the United Kingdom, blah blah blah. Essentially, these governments of each country are going to share their data with one another if their home country has a legitimate concern about the data. Just more transparency between governments. Take it for what you will. Now, in its appeal to the High Court, meanwhile, the U.S. government said that the U.S. tech sector should turn over any information requested with a valid court warrant. And it doesn't matter where the data is hosted, that the government argues, they argue that what matters is that the authorities is whether the data can be accessed from within the U.S. And we all know how the internet works. Even if it's held on international servers. The internet lets you search and access that data from anywhere in the world. And hey, if the US does it, what's to keep other countries from saying that we have a right to your data in the US on US servers? We have a right to that data as well. I don't know, opens up a can of worms. We'll see how the Supreme Court kind of lands on it. But in the meantime, everyone, that is it. We are done. Music means that, wow, this episode went really fast. And if you want to check out today's guest, again, it was TestM. It was a mobile app that lets you test your device, making sure that it works completely and fully before you buy it, sell it, or otherwise, kind of handle your phone. Check it out, testm.com, and full show notes, any articles that we did, and more at computeramerica.com. So, until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thank you for joining us, and hey, catch you on the flip side. Bye, everyone.